Hey there, welcome to the Consulting Matters podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Jordan. Let me ask you a couple questions. Are you a consultant or coach who cares deeply about creating organizations where employees are engaged and motivated to perform? Do you also want to be positioned as a key strategic partner to help the leaders you work with create this type of organization? These are critical questions that purpose driven, people centered consultants and coaches like us need answers to right now, especially today when employee engagement across the board is in a free fall. According to a study published by Gallup in January of this year, it's at a 10-year low in the United States. To help us answer these questions, I brought on the show Beverly Crowell. She is the managing partner at Design Learning, which is the for profit arm of Peter Block's work. She has deep expertise in what it really takes to create a thriving organization that works for everyone and how consultants and coaches can build their capacity to influence their creation. Today, we get into what too many of us, consultants and leaders, have gotten super wrong about employee engagement and how we've accidentally made it so much worse. How a culture of positive accountability, where we ask employees to take responsibility for their own engagement, is a far more respectful and sustainable way forward. We get into the shadow side of consultants wanting to be the expert in the room and how it stands in the way of making the impact that we want, and the shifts that we can make to cultivate our relationship and our influence skills to create the partnerships our clients really need. Even if they don't ask for it, they really need it. And we get into so much more. Beverly is a kindred spirit, and I am so grateful to have her on the show. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Beverly. So, before we dive into the conversation that is
Mhm,
near and dear to both of us, which is a better approach to employee engagement,
uh-huh.
can you share a little bit more about your background and how you came to be a managing partner of Design Learning and what has created your passion for this reimagined view of what employee engagement actually should be about?
Sure, love to. So I started my career at Kennedy Space Center, worked there for 16 years. When I left Kennedy Space Center, I left as the manager of professional development. So I led the learning and development for the space shuttle processing workforce. And of course, around the time that I left, it was nearing the end of the shuttle contract. So we were approaching shuttle flyout. And at the time, my boss, CEO, Mike McCully, a former astronaut, said,
Hmm.
Beverly, you need to do some work to prepare employees who are going to be leaving the program, but also help keep our critical skill workforce engaged and productive through shuttle flyout. That's when I had the opportunity to read a book called Love 'em or Lose 'em: Getting Good People to Stay, by Dr. Beverly Kay and Sharon Jordan Evans. And like most smart training professionals, I went to the back of the book and found out who to contact. And so we brought in, the company was called Career Systems International. It was run by Bev Kay. And we did career development and employee engagement training inside our program for our leadership and management team. And then as it became time to leave, I approached Bev, was just a big fan of her work and the methodology. I've always kind of been someone that's gone where, the work is that I believe in. And she said yes. So I worked with Bev and Career Systems, I think from 2007 to 2017, doing consulting and facilitation around employee engagement and career development. And then after, that was a long time, still love Bev, still, great work. Uh, Decided to take a leave from there, do some independent consulting on my own for a while, and came across Peter Block, who I work for now. He's the author of many books, including Flawless Consulting. And because I was consulting, that's how I came to know his book. And there was an open call for facilitators, people who were interested in becoming facilitators of Flawless Consulting. So I applied for that, got the opportunity, went and became certified by Peter to facilitate Flawless. And then after a while, he said, it would be great if you joined the organization. And I said, no, I don't want to. And he said, really? Would you think about it? And I thought about it. said, "Here's what it would take," and he said, "Great." And so I've been in the organization as the managing partner, leading it for the past 3 years now and continuing to facilitate and consult, but also, supporting Peter and our organization's, quest to bring his work to the world and all the folks who don't know about it yet.
And it's so interesting because it's like he's been around for so long, and it's just interesting that we still have that mission that we have to bring his work out to the world.
Absolutely.
So you have a great background to speak to my audience because you have both the internal consulting side,
Yeah.
you have working for somebody else's firm, and you also have been on your own.
Mhm.
And of course, being a part of Peter's work. So you have a lot of different perspectives
Yeah.
that may have shaped your definition around what you think really employee engagement should be about.
Mhm.
But before we talk about what it should be about, let's kind of get on the same page around what it is. Like,
Right.
what are people calling employee engagement, and how is that different? Like, so I know that, in our similar backgrounds, like the field has gone from employee satisfaction to
Mhm.
employee engagement. They're not necessarily the same. Not to say we have to go on a big history lesson, but if you can just set some context around, how did it go from employee satisfaction to engagement, and what is the definition now?
I think, many people when they think of employee engagement think of surveys. If we're being very honest, right? What do most people consider employee engagement? They consider it to be a survey or some large big firm like Gallup or others who go inside organizations. They do surveys to assess how people are feeling about the work, their current level of satisfaction. They're talking to managers about it. They're getting survey results that says, here's your employee engagement index. It's either, somewhere in this continuum of highly engaged to, highly disengaged and dissatisfied. And then crafting, organizations very well intended, crafting action plans on how to address those gaps. And there's been a ton of research around what it takes to engage people. Engagement doesn't necessarily equate to happiness. I think sometimes there's that, feeling that, oh, if an employee is engaged, they're happy. And that's not necessarily true. If somebody's engaged, it means that they are committed, they're focused, they are participating in and actively a part of the vision and the mission of the organization, and their role in that organization. That doesn't always equate to, every day I come to work and I'm happy and excited to be here. Even the best of jobs have frustrating days. So I think, that's
So
really
can
how people look at engagement today.
Can I ask you a question before
Yeah.
we go on to the next part? Like, I know I want to get to the definition a
Uh-huh.
little bit, but what you're saying is kind of interesting to me because when I was still a consultant and I was still working at Disney and moving into my own consulting
Mhm.
practice, at that time, it was a really big shift in the market. Like, the Corporate Leadership
Okay.
Council was talking about, like, oh, is satisfaction is like, how satisfied are you? Engagement is about performance, intent to
Mhm.
stay,
Mhm.
and discretionary performance. But it sounds like where things are at now, it's almost like it seems like it's become a mishmash of both of them. It gets kind of about a performance and kind of about satisfaction. It seems like that distinction is sort of like not there anymore. And it's just this overall thing of like, okay, how good are employees? Or I don't even know. It seems like the definition is not clear in my mind.
I think the definition isn't clear and it's dependent on who you talk to because there's multiple schools of thought around what engagement is, what it's not. And there's a lot of there's a lot of well-intentioned, myself being one in the past, facilitating workshops, consulting, having conversations around how to create an environment where people are able to bring their best selves to work every day. And as part of that, deliver the best possible results for themselves and for the organization, which which is what I believe engagement really is designed to try and do, right?
Right.
Um, what's fascinating is that despite all of this work, all of these surveys, all of the books and all of the efforts, people are still disengaged and current metrics say they're disengaged more now than they have been in a very, very long time.
And I think that's an interesting thing, and I can't imagine how it's not worse now. But no matter what, like you have an ebook that's out there,
Mhm.
and I know you have a lot of thinking around this. Is you stay very clearly just and when you start off your premise in your ebook is like we might have gotten it all wrong. So, what have we gotten wrong? Like, what's this narrative that we believe that drives all of the misconceptions that is leading to employee engagement not really doing anything that we thought it should?
Well, it's taken me a while to get here, and I will say that my thinking has evolved over time, and part of the evolution has come from working inside organizations and trying to create solutions that really do create that have a lasting impact and lasting change. And as someone who has gone into organizations around the world, Fortune 500s, and talked to them about employee engagement and retention, without fail, there was a group that was missing from the conversation every single time,
Hmm.
and the group was employees. We have equated and placed so much emphasis on employee engagement and retention being a leadership responsibility, a leadership imperative, a leadership being 100% accountable for the engagement and retention of their team, and have placed so much emphasis on the influence that they have. And by doing so, we have given employees a pass to take ownership for their own satisfaction, to take ownership and accountability for their engagement. And I don't care what you do, you can deploy all of the best give me things, everything that you can do, and you can have momentary moments of an employee being satisfied with what's happening. Leaders can do that. But the moment you take away those things, or the moment those things, whatever they are, stop, the disengagement can return because we have, in many ways, treated our employees as children. As
Yeah.
long as our children are being rewarded for good behavior, then they'll continue to behave that way. And so I think what's happened is we've just created this multi-billion-dollar industry that places so much of the responsibility and the burden of engaging employees on leaders, when in fact, leaders really don't have that much influence at the end of the day. It's up to me as an individual to take responsibility and accountability for myself and for the contribution that I want to make inside an organization.
And that is such a radical shift because we do feel like even the Gallup would say, like, oh, I have a leader who knows my name. I have a leader who cares about my development. I have a leader who has these things. And it is putting a lot of responsibility. And I would want to differentiate. Like sometimes, like, I think a leader is not responsible for an employee's
Mhm.
motivation, like, but what we can do is, like, that's just assuming, like, all things are basically decent,
Yeah.
like, there's some organizations that I worked with, like, I think all organizations are messed up in some ways where, there's pros and cons and,
Mhm.
no organization's perfectly functional.
Right.
Some of them are super toxic,
Mhm.
and I think we're not talking about the situation where employees are responsible for a toxic
No.
work environment where leaders are narcissistic and abusive and not providing the basics. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like a basically normal organization with the strengths and weaknesses, and that employees should be able to feel responsible.
Mhm.
So you said that a lot of times employee engagement turns into surveys. So what's the impact? Because if I'm an employee and I'm responsible for my own, it feels like there's two problems then with the surveys. There's the questions you ask and the
Mhm.
processes that you use around that survey. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at most employee engagement surveys, very few of them have statements or questions that people evaluate where somebody's assessing themselves. I take responsibility and accountability for learning and developing new skills so that I can position myself for the next career opportunity. It's usually my manager provides me opportunities for learning and development. So a lot of our surveys and the way in which they're written are very much focused on what others are doing to me. So it is we are doing by and for our employees in those surveys instead of having them be the active participants in their engagement. So just the nature of the questions in a lot of the surveys that are put out there um, abdic- allow me to abdicate any responsibility as an individual for what happens in my level of engagement inside the organization. No, it's the organization, it's my director, it's my manager, it's the process, it's the procedure. All of those things are evaluated, and not as much emphasis is placed on what I am doing as an individual to own that. So in many ways, I think the surveys, which by the way are only just representative of a point in time, it's
Right.
you're hoping that the moment that that survey hits that employee's desk, they happen to be in a good mood that day, and that just maybe an hour before their manager said, "So, what can I do to engage you?" It's dependent on a lot of environmental and external factors in order for you to get, some good results. So, we're counting on just so much to be right in that moment to ensure that we get the results that we want, which is virtually impossible. I remember I had gone into an organization to facilitate a program on employee engagement. Managers were in the room, and um, they were just really distressed about the results of their survey. The employee survey just did not reveal all of the actions that they had taken. They had done the extensive action planning and had all of those steps outlined. And they put out the survey and they're like, it just was, we did not get the results we wanted. We did this, 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 and this, and this. And then in talking to them further, discovered that just prior to them releasing the survey, they had closed the employee parking lot and shifted it offsite and had them arriving on buses because they were redoing the employee parking lot. So all of their efforts that they had done preceding that were negated by frustrated employees who had to go further um, to park when they're coming to work. And so just so much of it is dependent on those circumstances, the environment that's so outside of, it's just out of that control versus me as an individual. Do I have the ability when I'm here to create the environment in which I want to work?
Yeah.
It's a different mindset when it comes to thinking. We call it, positive accountability.
I
Accountability
def
by its nature doesn't have to be bad. It shouldn't be bad. There's positive aspects about being accountable.
I want to dive deep into positive accountability. Before we get there, I just want
Uh-huh,
to kind of like I just want to still paint a little bit
uh-huh,
more of the picture of like, okay, what's not working and why it's not. Because we as consultants, we are culpable
uh-huh,
to some of this as well as we might go in and think of employee engagement is as that annual survey.
uh-huh.
Where is that really the right process? Like when I was at Disney, we did an annual survey and then it was expected to do feedback on action planning at the
Yeah,
local level. And then
yes.
everybody action planned the survey. And then there was like continuous feedback loops. Like that
Mhm,
felt like that kind of worked. But then when I went to other organizations that it was just the survey, I could think of 2 clients that I work with. One, they have really bad work environment, super toxic. I'm not gonna get into that one because it was, like, really, really bad. Because that was one of those where there were suicides in the workplace, it was that bad.
that's bad.
But, but when I gave the feedback to the leaders, it was just one of those things where it's like, "That didn't really happen, let's just do a training," "and we'll just do a training for leaders." I'm like, "Yeah, you might just, like, destroy your population, they'll be super beside themselves." But then I had another client where, like, they just didn't like the feedback that people were saying. This
Uh-huh,
was a company that trained first responders, and they were very adamant that they wanted to have a voice in decisions that affected them.
sure.
But the leaders didn't wanna give that. So it's like, I think that there's another part is we do the surveys and we don't do the feedback and action
Uh-huh,
planning, or we do the surveys and the leaders don't like the results, so then they won't do anything about the results. So it's
mhm.
like the survey becomes the initiative
Yes,
rather than what is the point
yes,
of the whole thing in general.
right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and the survey in and of itself is not bad. The action planning is not bad. The actions that come out of those surveys are not bad. They're I would say in many cases, they're good, and organizations that work really hard at that, they will have a momentary bump, right? It's like, okay, there's going to be a bump right now, and as long as you continue to feed that beast, the beast will be satisfied. But the moment you stop feeding the beast, then people go, "Well, there's just like this hole that emerges, this chasm that emerges. And in order, I've learned that in the absence of information or the absence of something, people make things up or they fill it.
Yeah.
And what they fill it with is very rarely positive. It's usually the opposite. It's negative or it's challenging or it's questioning or it's frustrated. So it's just this relentless kind of wheel that we've allowed ourselves to get on. And it's become more and more clear to me that that's why people continue to be dissatisfied because that beast cannot be fed 24/7 every single day of every single year. It just can't.
And then the people who are the high performers, who are naturally motivated, will be very demotivated in that type of
Yeah,
environment. Like, we
absolutely.
don't need that. I did an interesting employee engagement project where we did the survey, but we aligned it to the performance,
Uh-huh.
what the performance ratings were,
Mhm.
and we identified that whoever was considered the most engaged were the highest performers and the most vocal,
Yeah.
the most vocal complaints. So they were the lowest in the employee satisfaction, but they were highest in performance. The
Okay.
ones who were satisfied, who felt like they had the friend at work, they had the
Uh-huh.
leader who cared about them. They were the lowest performers, and I think that that's somewhere in there is I think it said in your ebook is that there's the prevailing narrative is that people are disengaged and that they're not necessarily motivated and that employees are problems to be fixed.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more to why is that like, because that feels like the root cause of why traditional employee engagement isn't working.
Well, it's a way in which to frame it that I had never thought of before, right? In looking at, part of being a part of Peter's world of flawless consulting, what we do is always look to try to get away from the symptoms of something. We call those the presenting problem, right? It's what's above the waterline if you're looking at an iceberg. There's just what's most obvious. And then there's the underlying issues or the underlying dimension of any problem. You could call it root cause if you're, continuous
Mhm.
improvement, Lean Six Sigma, whatever. I think with employee engagement, we've been treating the symptoms, right? The presenting problems, the things that are above the surface, if you will. And we are treating employees as if they're a problem to be fixed. We are doing something to them and for them, not by and with them. There is a very big difference between doing to and for and by and with. And
Yes.
and that's the shift that I believe has to occur in order for true engagement of all parties. It's stop doing things to and for me and do things by and with me because then I'm a
Yes.
part of the solution. I am a part of the conversation. And because I'm a part of it, I am accountable to it as well. And as such, as an employee, that makes me a little nervous and a little scary, sure. It may require me to do things differently, which will ultimately require my leadership to do things differently too. So it is a real mind shift and it can cause, you know, it's not, I don't think it's one that will easily occur. Um, but I think it's one that has to happen or we're just going to continue, you know, doing the same thing and getting the same results.
Like, it's not to say it's like getting rid of the hierarchy, if you will, or like the org chart. It's just like it's really just moving the power for decision making to the right levels for the
Yeah.
right reasons at the right time. That it's not it doesn't even make sense. Like if you have leaders sitting in around a room and you want to improve the the frontline customer experience, what do they know? They're not
Right.
there day in and day out. Like that doesn't even make sense, but we want to strategize like that.
And,
So,
and we say that we're doing it by inviting them to a focus group.
right.
Right? So come to this focus group, tell us all of the things that need to occur. And typically because we are accustomed to what are more traditional kind of models of work, we say, here's all of the things I need you to do to fix all of these problems. So we as employees are conditioned to just give it all over to leadership and expect them to fix it versus truly being collaborative partners in trying to understand not only what is leadership management organization doing, what is their contribution to the problem, but what is my contribution to the very problem of which I find myself complaining about. And that's a level that we don't go to because we are concerned about creating, we don't want to seem too pushy. We don't want to scare people, all of those things. And in organizations that I worked with, Bev Kay, who is a wonderful, expert around engagement and retention, she understood this. She had two books. She has two books. Love them or Lose them, Getting Good People to Stay, written for managers, 26 ways to engage your employees. She also had another book, Love It, Don't Leave It, 26 ways to get what you want out of work. It's written for the
Mm.
employees to be self-empowered to do that. Without question, organizations would pay, and they would pay great amounts of money to train the employee or to train the managers, but they would never ever invest in their employees. And it was
Well,
always
they'd have
something
they'd have to give up power. They
they
have to give up
exactly.
control.
What? Oh my gosh, it would be like teach your employees to ask what they want. What?
No, I need to tell them what they
I
want.
need to
They
tell
don't
them what
know.
they want.
They're children. Like, I mean, that's why they
Exactly.
don't listen. It's like, I don't want them to want what they want. I want them to want what I want them to want. So therefore, I'm going it's about a power and control thing.
It is. It's kind of
It's
that parent-child relationship. It's the traditional kind of mindset model that organizations have operated in for years, and and I just don't think it works anymore. Evidence just shows it doesn't. It's not working.
so to describe it, call it a culture of positive accountability. So can you describe the definition of what is positive accountability?
Positive accountability is moving away from this traditional model of leading, where leaders and managers are responsible for engaging and retaining their workforce 100%, right? Essentially, wholly saying, it's moving away from kind of that parental model that says, I'm here to do for you, I'm here to provide for you. A lot of which is done in all of the best intentions, right? It's that service mindset. I'm here to serve you, I'm here to help you. And it's shifting away from that, and it's moving away from that to and for to by and with. Working by and with employees and saying, you have far more power, and I want you to have far more power in creating the organization that you want to be a part of, being accountable for your choices, being accountable for what it is that you want from work and asking for it, being accountable for how you will be measured, and then holding yourself accountable to that standard of measurement. It is saying, I have the capacity as an individual to create the organization that I want through how I do my work and what I ask for. It's and in order for that to work, you have to have leaders who are willing to have that conversation, who are willing to invite that. It is shifting almost to an entrepreneurial mindset where I am in the business of me, not from a
Mhm.
selfish perspective,
Yes, yes,
not
yes.
selfishly, but I want to be able to do my best work, be my best self, because in doing so, I'm able to do that for you and in service of you and in the organization. Um, and it requires individuals to get clear on who they are, their values, what's important to them, what matters to them, to be able to say, here is what I want, and articulate that language very clearly and succinctly so that others understand that. Um, it means recognizing that when you are in a room of people, how you show up impacts that room, and having accountability for being a positive impact in the room, bringing yourself there saying, I want this room to be a space of learning. I will show up as a learner. I want to support the learning of all others. So holding ourselves, to a standard that perhaps we've never held ourselves to, holding ourselves accountable to achieving higher levels of performance, of not waiting for someone else to tell us what the bar is. but us establishing that bar for ourselves and taking satisfaction from being able to deliver upon that and creating impact around us, not necessarily from getting a pat on the back, a bonus assessment. Those things are nice, and I'll never turn
Mm.
it down.
No, 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 don't give me more money, don't give me a
Yeah,
raise.
exactly. I'll
No, no,
always
no.
accept it.
Yeah.
But being able to just, um, be empowered to create and make a difference in the space in which I inhabit. And and the truth is we're doing it already. We just don't know, we may not be doing it in the way we want. You are already showing up, but are you showing up in the way that you want to show up? Is the experience that others are having with you the experience you want them to have? And
Okay, I gotta jump in here because
okay.
there's 2 separate trajectories I wanna take you
Okay,
on with what
sounds
you're
good.
saying here. Okay. So, because I wanna talk about, like, how you're showing up and taking
Yeah.
responsibility, the entrepreneurial mindset. I definitely wanna get to that.
Yeah.
But I wanna before I do that, I know that my lean clients who are listening in are be like, "Yes, this is what we've been saying all along
Yeah.
about creating that culture of problem solving at the right level, empowering employees at the right level, the culture of learning."
Mhm.
And one of my biggest frustrations as a branding person, um, an OD person turning a branding person. So
Right,
I've been in
right.
OD for like 30 years. And I always thought lean was nothing more than just process improvement.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed because their name lean is like it's a horrible name, it
Yeah.
needs to change, but what I've discovered through working with several of my clients, it's like I'm super passionate about like because what you're talking about from a culture standpoint is very aligned with what they're talking
Mhm.
about. And as an OD person, like, we're doing that old model of what you're talking about, with employee engagement, and if we do an employee engagement project, like, we have to bring in this mindset, and there's, like, all these systems and processes within the lean world that we can tap into and partner with to make
Mhm.
this happen, but we need to shift our thinking around how that power is really distributed and what the lean people would say. Well, I'm late in life to this whole lean thing, so I'm super excited about it. But the foundation of respect for people,
Yeah.
and I think that that's what you're talking about is the fundamental shift into a culture of positive accountability is I respect the adulthood
Yes.
and the dignity and the agency of these
Mhm.
employees. I'm not gonna treat them like children,
Yes.
I'm not gonna scold them when they do something that doesn't work. I'm going to treat them with the respect of an adult. And
Yes.
I think that's the foundational, like, if you wanna move from a culture an old employee engagement model with the surveys and the leaders
Right.
own it to this other model, it's just a shift of perspective is I don't have broken employees who are demotivated, who
Right.
are like children that need to be led and they cannot do anything without the carrots. Like they won't do anything without the carrots and the sticks.
Mhm.
To this new model is my perspective on these people is they're adults, they wanna do good work.
Mhm.
They wanna have a career. It's just my job to give some sort of structure towards whatever that end
Mhm.
is, but it's not my job to motivate them. It's
Right.
not my job to make them happy.
Mhm.
That's their job.
Mhm.
I mean, it's my job to not be toxic and crazy.
Correct. And it's my job to create an environment in which that can thrive.
Yes.
That, to create that space where that mindset can begin to thrive and people go, "Oh, okay. That's different." Now what do I do?
So going on the second part, because I think this really taps into my passion around like flawless consulting that really and how I wound up as a brand positioning person anyway,
Mhm.
is you're talking about this entrepreneurial mindset. Like I believe like my whole thing when I read your ebook and it's like, hey, I've been thinking that and I didn't tell anybody. How in the world did she know? But
Mm.
I've been thinking about the employee engagement model is from an entrepreneurial state
Mhm.
space is like I'm just creating my own brand and my own book of work. And I
Yes.
do great work, not because I am necessarily committed to the organization, but I'm building my reputation. And the better work I do, the more opportunities I will get. Like that's the return on investment. Like I take responsibility for my performance because good performance will pay off in opportunities.
Uh-huh.
Period. And I think the same thing with consultants like why it makes me batty around like how we show up within or in an organization is
Uh-huh.
like Peter would say, we have the choices is like, do we want to go in as these experts or do we want to go in as a collaborator? It's a choice of how we show up. So can you like extrapolate this whole me Inc. idea, from, both the standpoint around what we as consultants and coaches should do differently
Yeah.
when we engage our clients, but how do we as consultants and coaches need to show up in our branding and how we are positioning ourselves when landing work, all of the stuff that's in flawless consulting and how we're engaging our client systems. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so couple of paths. I'll start first with, how we show up as consultants. I think, that for me has been a learning over years. And I had, when I was younger, when I was less experienced, I had this belief that I had to prove myself, that I had to demonstrate my value, um, to to be worthy of being invited into whatever room that it was that I was invited into. And in my head, the only way I could demonstrate my value was to show how smart I was, all of this expertise that I had to offer, how much I had learned, how much I knew. And so oftentimes I would go into organizations, not necessarily I would say I'm collaborative, but really what I was doing is I'm coming in and I'm going to look at everything and I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong and then share all of my expert wisdom, right? And how to correct it and how to fix it. And I really was not partnering with clients. I would say those words and we would have meetings together and we would chat and I might ask them what they thought. But really what I was there to do was to solve the problem that I believed needed to be solved, whether or not it truly was the underlying issue that was happening. And I think many consultants do that, right? We kind of have
Mhm.
this it's our ego sometimes that's impacted. Not everybody thinks of consultants in a positive way, right? There's they hear the word consultant and there's kind of this negative connotation around it. So so we have some baggage that we try and contend with and we walk in that expert space. Um and that works, it can work and you can position yourself in that way, but I would say you're really not being consultative. What you're doing is you're just a hired person. You've just kind of made yourself a hired supplement to their team, whatever that looks like. So if you've gone into consult on engagement, you're an external contract hire to do employee engagement. You're really not consulting. So as I've evolved and as I've thought more about it, just this idea around being consultative and the brand called me, if you will, and being entrepreneurial, it is trying to understand what is it that I am trying to accomplish for my clients. And it is a complete detachment from your ego in some ways, because the goal of every good consultant should be to work themselves out of a job.
Right.
And once you've realized that, then you can't be so attached to your expertise, right? I can't go in there and hope to I don't want them to be so dependent upon me that the idea of me leaving causes concern and whatnot. So I do need to show up in a very different way, in a way that's I'm going to give you my best self when I'm here, but more importantly, my goal is to help bring out your best self at the same time so that we can come to, we can solve this issue, solve this problem so that it stays solved. I don't want to come back for the same problem. That should never be my goal as a consultant to come back for the same problem. Nor should I ever want them to ask me to stay. If they want me to stay, that tells me I probably haven't done my job in the way that I should have. Um, so I don't know if that answered part of the question. I feel like I've kind of
No,
tangented
no,
off a
no. I
little
think it
bit. Um,
No, we're like completely aligned. And I think that what I would tell people is like where you try to visualize yourself on the org chart is
yeah.
like you're not under the leader and you're not above the leader and you're not even next to the leader. Like there's a boundary around it
Uh-huh.
and you skate on the edge of the system.
Yeah.
That's where your positioning in is that's where the power role is.
Mhm.
But I think I don't know if it's, like, all ego, but I think some of it is if I came up through a leadership career and I'm
Uh,
used to having positional authority, like,
Yeah.
I don't have a conception of doing it otherwise,
Yeah.
or if I'm an internal consultant, you see, like, oh, if there's a downturn, there's all the people who are having the formal responsibility, like, I'm gonna be on the chopping block, so
Right.
there's, like, a concern around that. And then I think if we believe, like, what I imagine that Peter and you would believe is, like, we are the instrument, it's on our relationship, it's how
Right.
we show up, it's like our relationship is the container
Mm,
or the delivery mechanism of our expertise. Well, that's very vulnerable
uh-huh.
because it's about me, but the fact is our clients never hire us for our expertise. I learned this, I did a survey of
Uh-huh.
some of the executives I used to work with when I was transitioning into the work I do now, and I was asking them, like, "What motivates you to hire a consultant?" And I talked to this one guy who I worked with and, when he was at Disney, when he left Disney, he used me for so many different things, and he was saying, it's like, "Oh, you have this ability to sort and organize ideas." And I'm like, "But Brad, like, what about my OD expertise? What about my master's?" Like, "Oh, I didn't care at all about that."
Right.
I'm like, "What?" Like, but what about, like, like, all that stuff that I did and the research and the feedback report? He's like, "No, it was because you were helping me organize it and you could corral all the
Yeah.
stakeholders and get
But
us on
when
the same page." I'm like, "This is fascinating."
Yeah.
Like, all of this money, this effort, all this anxiety that I'm gonna put into my expertise,
Uh-huh.
and the clients don't care about it because they really do want a partner. They don't know that they want a
Uh-huh.
partner, but they do need somebody to collaborate, help them clarify what is it that they want, and then we could bring in ideas around, "Well, how do we get you to where you wanna go, but I'm
Mhm.
not telling you where what you wanna go."
Uh-huh. And oftentimes what they also want is for you to tell them the things that everybody else is afraid to.
Yes.
I mean, it is they get enough guessing inside the organization or with other partners, direct reports. Sometimes what they need is for you to tell them the hard stuff and not be afraid to do that. It doesn't mean that they're going to like it. It doesn't even mean that they may welcome it initially. Um, but that's where our true value, I think, really can demonstrate, or that's where our true value comes into play in partnering with clients is being able to give them some of those hard truths and
Mhm.
and tell them usually what they're doing or not doing to manage the very problem that they continue to have issue with and point out, Peter will say that unfortunately we were born on the wrong side of our eyes. So we are oftentimes eyes for the client to help them see things that they can see but can't see for themselves.
So I know that Design Learning offers flawless
Uh-huh.
consulting programs. And I'm not trying to have you share everything, but could you give like a couple tips from I know you have like master classes, you have live
Mhm.
workshops, you have custom workshops that go into organizations. But is there anything in the training that you teach consultants who want to learn that skill set around how do I move from sort of like that pair of hands
Uh-huh.
trap into this collaboration trap? Like, what are some of the tweaks or changes that you would suggest for them?
It begins with the agreement, and we call it contracting. And for many of us, we think of contracting very much, especially if you're an external consultant going internal, working with a client, you're thinking about it from the formal contract, right? Here are the key deliverables. Here's where everything is due. And that's important, certainly. But whether you're an internal or an external consultant, our definition and the definition that I lean into is consulting is influencing for change where you have no direct authority or control.
Hmm.
And
Can you
there
say
are
that again? Because that's really good, and
yeah, so
say it
consulting
slow, because this is
consult
good.
consulting is influencing for change where you have no direct authority or control, whether you are an internal consultant or an external consultant. And there are two ways we influence. So we influence people two ways. First, we influence through our technical expertise. It's the what of work. And typically, that's what gets us in the front door, right? Our technical expertise is what opens the door for us. But it's not our technical expertise, oftentimes will get us the job and get us in the door. But the other way in which we influence people is through our relationships. It is our relationships that will ensure the recommendations we offer are implemented. not our technical expertise. So when we think about influencing for change, we need to reach agreements on how we're going to partner around the what of work, which is our technical relationship. We also need to reach agreements on how we are going to partner because that builds the relationship. So, what consultants don't realize is they have the capacity to create the type of relationship they want if they establish it and continue to establish it through the agreements they build with their clients, not only on what they're doing, but how they're going to partner.
Mm. And it's really making the relationship, like, almost, like, more valuable than anything else. Like, you have to contract, like, one of the things that I learned early on at Disney around, like, the contracting is,
Mhm.
like, you have to ask for the things. Maybe is this Peter or maybe this for somewhere else we
Mhm.
got it, is you ask for the 3 things of, like, I wanna be able to have an independent point or access to people and resources, an
Mhm.
independent point of view, and an ability to raise difficult issues. Is that Peter or is that somewhere else?
That's at
But those
least
are the
yeah, it's at least Peter. We call them wants and offers. So part of having an agreement is you do a contracting meeting. You start with here's kind of this personal acknowledgement. We always begin with connection before content. The
Mhm.
relationship building begins in connecting around how do you feel about working together? What is this feeling like for you? And then it's asking questions to understand what the client believes the issue or problem to be. Not to solve the problem yet, not to jump into diagnosing and solving. And then ask the client, what do you expect from this partnership? What do you want from me? And we listen. And then as we listen, we share, here's what I want from you. Not from a position of give me what I want, what I really, really want. I think that's a
Yeah.
Spice Girls song. And not trying to be, it's just all about me. It's here's what I want from you in order to be accountable to myself and to be accountable to you on delivering the best possible results so that I can help you solve this problem so that it stays solved. So we're asking for those things that we want in the spirit of building and creating a relationship that is founded on trust, it's authentic, and that by the time we get to the point where I come back and say, here's what you need to do, or here's some suggestions, you'll listen. I'll ask you what you think is possible. What are your options? And the two of us will continue to talk and something will be done. It won't just be a case of, I found this, I have to show this sign. I show it a lot of times when I teach. I found this at Ollie's Bargain Barn. I don't work here, I'm a consultant,
I love that.
which I
Oh my
died when I saw it because it's the absolute opposite of what we want to be, right? But it is the perception many people have of what it means to be a consultant. Um, I do work here, right? I work here in the spirit of helping you do something that you haven't been able to do on your own. And I want to be a partner in that. And I hold myself accountable to helping you achieve that.
I almost feel like it's like I work here, but I don't work here because I don't have a dog in the hunt. Like, part of the benefit
Yeah.
that you have here is I don't work here. I
Mhm.
have objectivity. I'm not like one of your direct reports where I have a vested interest
Yep.
in whichever way you're gonna go.
Mhm.
Like, there's benefits of, like, not working here, and I feel like it's kind of like I work here and I don't. I
Mhm.
skate on the edge of the system,
Uh-huh.
and that's where I wanna be. That's where my power is. Like, I'm a
Yes.
part of it, but I'm not a part of it.
Mhm.
You have to know enough, but you don't wanna be in the middle of it because how can you diagnose or,
Right.
have the objectivity?
Well, you
I liked
can't.
what you said about the accountabilities, though. I wanna go back to that because I
Mhm.
feels like contracting for joint accountabilities is a part of that positive accountability culture.
Yes.
Like, it's just really modeling and the one-on-one level of, like, with the consultant coach and the leader is this is your role, this is my role.
Uh-huh.
This is how we're gonna work together to achieve this outcome.
Mhm.
I think it's similar is with the leader, manager, and the team is like, this is your role. This is your role, this is your role, this is your role. Now we're gonna all work together, and I'll hold myself accountable for my role,
Uh-huh.
for fulfilling that, like, so we all have a role in the show here,
Uh-huh.
and that seems to be the through line between both of them it all begins with accountabilities, and I'll take responsibility for my part, you take responsibility for yours.
Absolutely. And articulating what that responsibility looks like, right? Being able to share it, being able to ask for things that enable you to do that, um, and not requiring somebody else to always do it for you. If that's the case, then you're not consulting, right? You're not really consulting, or you're not being self-powered or empowered around your engagement and around your satisfaction. You are just allowing everything to happen to you versus being an active participant in your life and in your work. And the amazing thing about all of this is we fuss all the time about this lack of choice we have, this lack of, I can't do anything, right? My so and so won't let me. I can't do this, I can't do that. And what I find is more often than not, we have just so easily handed that over and handed over our happiness to others instead of saying, "No, I can do these things for myself. I can show up and ask the questions. I may not get the answer I want. I may not get exactly what I want, but I can ask and maybe I can negotiate and get part of it." But before we even get there, we just abdicate, everything all too often. And our cultures have created that. And that's what's so interesting about employee engagement and why, organizations are so frustrated. We have created this culture encouraging employees to abdicate their accountability and responsibility. And now are asking why aren't they being responsible and accountable? And it's just this relentless circle that we continue to find ourselves in.
I feel like the through line of what we're talking about here is it relates to even how I show up with my clients or what I'm trying to create in the organization is employee engagement is the wrong word. And I don't even think it's employee empowerment. I think it's organizational empowerment
Mhm.
because it's looking at it more holistically. And it's really about changing our relationship with power. I
Yes.
think that we flip flop. Like there's the power over,
Mm,
and then there's the power under versus the
mhm.
power with.
Yeah.
So employee engagement as a model has like power over, power under. Leaders think they're controlling everything and
Mhm.
employees are supposed to submit. And then employees are sort of like in that power under, like, oh, I have nothing to do here.
Right.
Similarly, like when a consultant goes into an organization, it's like, well, they don't know where their power, where to find their power.
Mhm.
So they're going to go in as a surrogate leader. So it's like, I got to grab my power that way. Or they're going to be the pair of hands because I'll abdicate, do whatever
Right.
the leader wants.
Exactly.
The answer to both problems and to all the problems is power with,
Uh-huh.
is that my power doesn't come from the org chart, even the leader. My
Mm,
power is not coming from the org chart. If I did, that's kind of more coercion, is
uh-huh.
power over.
Uh-huh.
But if my goal is to be a good steward of power, my own power and other people's power,
Uh-huh.
then I can create that environment, and similarly, when you're contracting with a client, it's about managing where's the source of my power and having a vision for co-creation
Uh-huh.
of the relationship and that we are collaborating, we're partners.
Yes. Absolutely. Amen.
This has been
Amen.
so helpful. It's just been so interesting for me to hear it and to connect with Peter and now with you is I um I didn't realize how much Peter has influenced, like not just the work I did as a consultant, but everything that I do as a brand positioning person. And I had one colleague asked me a few years ago, she's like, you call everybody a partner. Everybody's a partner to you. Like, why are they all partners? You say like everybody you work with, we're partners. You say, we're going to partner together. My approach to sales, I call it partnership setup. I don't
Right.
call it sales. I don't even call it contracting. I call it
Right.
partnership setup. And I think that that's the whole idea is like you have your gifts, I have my
Mhm.
gifts. We don't have the same gifts, but together 1 plus 1 equals 64. Like if we bring all of our gifts, that stone soup
Okay.
metaphor, where that story where the little kid came into the town and he had like, I'm making stone soup and everybody brought their thing and then they made
Right.
this feast. That's what organizational empowerment looks like is I bring in my carrots, you bring in your
Mhm.
potatoes, and we make something better.
Well, it's all about relationship, right? Relationships are the mechanism of getting anything done anywhere. And relationships require two people, any, healthy relationship require two people bringing their skills, their best selves, everything to that conversation, to that opportunity, to whatever it is. And we have um, we've cultivated the wrong kind of relationships in the world of
Yes.
work. And it's time to cultivate different ones. Relationships built on the word partnership, relationships in partnership, where we stop doing things to and for and by and with people. And it's a completely different way of thinking and showing up with others. And it begins with, for us as individuals, sitting with ourselves and being very honest about who we are and how we currently show up. And what do I need to do differently to authentically invite this new way of being with others?
Mm. So good. So, so good. Okay. I could talk to you all day long about all this stuff. But
If
I do want to make sure that we're really clear because there's a lot of consultants,
Mhm.
my podcast is for consultants, and I
Cool.
know that there's a lot that design learning has to offer.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit more about your mission, its programs? I know that there's an upcoming master class that Peter's offering.
Yeah.
Can you give us the deets, what your web address is? Just give
Sure.
us the deets on how everybody can engage with you all.
So the company is called Designed Learning. You can engage with us on LinkedIn. We're always posting new content. You can also visit our website, www.designedlearning.com. We are a company founded by Peter Block, who is an author. He's written a dozen or so plus books, the most well known being Flawless Consulting. He's written another book called Community, The Structure of Belonging. And the third book, which is called The Empowered Manager. Of those 3 books, we have 3 training classes, 3 learning solutions and experiences and opportunities. Our goal is to bring the books to life. It's great to read a book, but reading a book doesn't give you the practical experience and help you learn how to apply all of those principles. So we have flawless consulting workshops that's designed for external, internal people, anyone who's in the position of influencing for change where they have no
So
direct authority or control, which is pretty
so
much
all you
us.
OD consultants, all you L&D consultants who are listening, your lean consultants, you all
Yes.
need to have this. We
Yes.
learned this at Disney early on, transformational.
Yeah, we teach the process. We teach a very, a process of building relationships. Actually, we say it's a process of accelerating relationships. We have another program called Leader as Convener. And it's based on Peter's book Community, the Structure of Belonging. And it's to help organizations move away from traditional meeting to more convening, bringing groups of people together in very different ways around 6 conversations in small groups. We do a lot of work with global foundations, nonprofit organizations. It's also a great program if you're corporate social responsibility and you're engaging with communities as well. And then we have another class called Empowered at Work, and it's creating a culture of positive accountability. So that program is designed based on the empowered manager to help individuals and organizations create that positive accountability culture that we've been talking about. And then we have experiences, and then we have a master class coming up with Peter beginning July 9th. 5 sessions with Peter, talking about various topics from what HR needs to look like in the world of work today to community partnerships and economic revitalization. So pretty diverse, portfolio of things. If you have never heard Peter, it's a great way to get exposed to him and his activism, his what he calls himself a relational activist, uh, and learn more about that. And yeah, just check us out. We love to chat with folks.
I know some people are wondering because you mentioned how you got involved with Peter is like
Yeah.
there was an open call for facilitators. Some people are saying, I want to facilitate this stuff. Is that something that is still open or is that like
We're
you're
always
filled up,
looking
right?
for great people who are interested in growing their own portfolio. People who have been consultants inside organizations are typically who we like to partner with because a lot of our clients are internal consultants. That's a different methodology, a different mindset. But if anybody's interested, reach out. You never know. Right now we don't have any specific needs, but we are always interested in meeting great people and expanding our list of facilitators around the globe.
Awesome. Okay, so we talked about a lot of different things. We
Mhm.
talked about the free fall of employee engagement, why everybody's gotten it wrong. The alternative to employee engagement efforts is all about positive accountability within the organization. We talked about how consultants become more flawless consultants and use their influence to make a difference. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today? And I'm just not asking you the right question.
I don't think so. I just love that we had the opportunity to connect and to visit. And I would say that this is just a testament to the power of connection and the power of reaching out and meeting new people. And you never know when those lines or threads can connect and you make new friends. And as consultants, I think it's tremendously important that we're constantly expanding our network and we're connecting with others and continuing to learn and grow. And Peter said something to me once that was really meaningful, and it's something I continue to remember as a consultant. He says, you know, the moment you say you're experienced, you've stopped consulting. The moment you say
Oh,
you're an expert, you're no longer a consultant. Consulting means that you approach your work with just this insatiable curiosity and a recognition that you don't know it all. And the moment begin to think you do, you're no longer consulting. So I would just challenge anybody who uses that title of consultant to remain insatiably curious and to consistently seek to learn from not only your clients, but from others. That's what will make you not just a good consultant, but a great one. And I keep trying to do that myself.
I I love that, and I feel like this has been such a blessing for me, like, it was a big deal for me, like, stepping outside of my comfort zone to ask Peter to be on the show, because it's not always you don't always have the opportunity to talk to your heroes and meet
Yeah.
them and really pick their brains, and, Peter's involved in his activism, stuff that I care about, and that was amazing, but then I got this extra bonus, like, I have somebody now where it's like, "Wow, like, you are thinking thoughts and several steps ahead of things that I sort of had germs of an idea. And that's where sometimes, like, you never know where things are gonna go. Like, lead with your curiosity. But I got this extra gift. Like, having you on the show is this extra bonus that I was not expecting to have when I reached out to Peter in the first place. And now I know all about design learning. Now I'm super excited. And I feel so like it's like such a full circle moment,
Mhm.
for all the things that you were talking about, to go back to the roots of saying, I was really blessed all those years ago to have that opportunity to have these thoughts, and
Mhm.
who knew that it was going to lead to where this is today. So I am so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank
Please check
you.
out Design Learning for sure. And for those of you who are listening, I am going to follow this episode up with an interview with a couple of lean consultants, and we're going to continue the conversation around employee engagement and how to actually do it at the right level, just like Beverly was saying. And I'm probably going to continue to express my ongoing frustration with lean's branding, because I'm so in love with this field and what it does and how it really reflects this whole vision around positive accountability and respect for people. And so definitely tune in to the next episode. So be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening, and follow along. And until next time, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.